Kreis clutched the rolled-up parchment to his chest and spoke. It was a rough path, a sloping, rocky path with steep inclines, making it hard to catch their breath. But it wasn't enough to keep him from speaking.
Rems, you say?
He exhaled, pushing his foot into a crevice in the rock. Just as he felt a bit dizzy, a hand appeared. It was Enkrid's outstretched hand. Kreis grasped the hand and pulled himself up. Behind them, a large rock served as a natural shield, providing cover on the rocky mountain. They had chosen a difficult path, perhaps because it added some meaning to their journey. At least it seemed effective, as there were no arrows flying at them yet.
Except for his personality, he's quite a good soldier,
Kreis remarked. Enkrid, leaning against a rock and looking back at Kreis, responded,
"If we're only judging by skill."
He opened his mouth but then closed it, thinking that if they were only considering skill, Rem would be more than capable. What if Rem had a more relaxed personality? Kreis asked Enkrid again.
He'll be okay, right?
Even though Kreis had planned the operation, he still felt uneasy, probably because of his nature. He was the type to secretly hide his belongings near the camp, just in case something happened. It wouldn't be surprising if he had hidden various things around the city as well.
We might get ambushed by the enemy unexpectedly. If I die hiding this, I'd feel so wronged my spirit would linger,
he often said, despite there being no signs of danger. He was always nervous, always saying,
It's because I'm anxious. It's because I'm anxious.
People are different after all. Compared to Kreis, Enkrid thought of himself as more relaxed. Enkrid, who had been staring at Kreis, finally spoke.
If he said he'd do it, he'll handle it.
Rem was that kind of guy. Once he committed to something, he'd see it through.
Are you willing to learn?
He had said the same thing when teaching the heart of the beast. Who would so easily share their skills?
Watch closely. You'll be learning it next.
It was the same when he demonstrated the heart of the beast. He had claimed he'd kill a giant and did so. Thinking back, he's an extraordinary guy. So, he would do as he said. What did he say before leaving? Something about the difference between a hunter and a sniper, and he added another remark.
I'll make sure to put this arrow right between the bird's eyes,
He'd said, placing an arrow in his waist, so he'd take care of it.
From here on, it'll be hard to hide.
Finn said ahead of them. Up until now, they had been moving between rocks. They needed to find a path that offered cover from projectile weapons, requiring them to gain a higher vantage point. It was a moment that reminded them of Finn's exceptional skills as a ranger. Thanks to him, they'd avoided detection so far. But now, the ranger's skill no longer provided the necessary cover. Enkrid mentally gauged the time. It seemed about time for Rem to act. They had been moving alongside the rocky mountain. If they continued left, they would rejoin the main force and return.
We should wait,
he suggested. Enkrid spoke, and Finn remained silent, sensing a certain bond between the members. There was a palpable sense of trust that Rem, who had gone off alone into the brush, would handle things on his own, something evident in Enkrid's tone. What about the other team members? Aside from Andrew and Mac, the others seemed quite at ease.
By the Lord's grace you have sent believers among us. Let those without faith repent, rebuke their sins, and grant them forgiveness.
Auden prayed. Jackson, meanwhile, was examining the blade of a stiletto, his face expressionless, yet oddly appearing, as if he were intoxicated. Even Finn thought the weapon seemed unusual. It didn't seem like the kind of dagger one would cherish so dearly, and yet there was an unusual liveliness on his face. The lazy one had sprawled out, somehow managing to squeeze himself between the rocks, holding two swords close and closing his eyes.
Not enough sleep,
he muttered to himself, clearly not in the best state of mind.
Should I just leave this alone?
Probably. In Finn's judgment, it was time to move. There was a master archer somewhere far off, a significant threat, and their lives could be on the line.
It'll be fine,
Kreis said, the soldier with big eyes beside them. Despite constantly expressing unease, he finally declared everything would be okay. Then he added something even more peculiar.
I think we've eliminated most variables.
What variables? He didn't elaborate. Finn deliberately exposed herself to check behind them, aiming to provoke a reaction and identify the enemy's position, but no arrows came their way.
This brings back memories.
There were days when he used the plains as his bed and the sky as his blanket, times when he played on mountain ridges. Back then, what kind of person was he? He was a skilled and excellent hunter, someone who carried the expectations of others. A time of balancing responsibilities and duties, of discussing power. There were good moments and bad moments, moments he could never return to, but what could he do? He had to accept things and live on. The West had now become a frontier, acceptance and acquiescence. Rem learned this from observing Enkrid. In some ways, his platoon leader seemed like someone who would never accept or agree to anything. Yet, in another light, he was a person who could accept, agree, and acknowledge.
Acknowledging that talent.
Deciding to become a knight without giving up? That was a form of self-destructive behavior, both mentally and physically. But he kept moving forward. Watching him from behind stirred all sorts of thoughts. How could a person be like that? The thought arose, acknowledging a lack of talent. That was where Enkrid started, accepting, acknowledging, and agreeing. After reflecting on what he possessed, what did he do? He moved forward. He acquired the heart of the beast, a technique that seemed impossible to master without dying first. Now that heart also contained incredible strength. He accepted, acknowledged, and agreed, then walked towards the future. Whether at dawn or dusk, he was consistent. Thinking of his platoon leader always lifted his spirits. Rem silently smiled, feeling good for no particular reason.
It's been a while.
He felt like swinging an axe energetically. The urge to return to the days when he immersed himself in the word hunt arose. Finding the trail of an archer was not difficult. Rem was neither a pathfinder nor a ranger, but he was as a hunter. A pathfinder is one who walks well. A ranger is one who walks well and fights well. Rangers are specialized members of the scout units, but are they hunters? Catching a few rabbits doesn't make one a hunter. So what is a hunter?
What else could it be?
They are those who catch their target accurately. Many of the continent's people were in bad shape. Wasn't there someone named Enri? A plains hunter? No, such a person couldn't be called a hunter. No, in his tribe, Enri wouldn't have been a hunter or even a guide. He wouldn't have even been half of one. In his tribe, a hunter was someone who killed and captured game, someone who sustained the tribe's livelihood.
There it is.
At the end of his thoughts, Rem spotted his prey. He had followed the scent, circling around to get behind it. Erasing his tracks? That was no problem. Rem could move as silently as a stealthy wildcat. From his perspective, there were easy and hard prey. Right now, it was the easiest kind of prey. A fool completely engrossed in their target, there couldn't be an easier target. His movements were as graceful as the finest hunters of the western wilderness. His breathing was long and slow, holding his breath to hide his presence, mimicking the round-headed predators known as the hunters of the western lakes. Though there was a slight rustle of his clothes, he ignored it. The target was too absorbed in what was ahead. After grabbing the rear, Rem closed in tightly behind the last person in the group. The enemy remained unaware of Rem's presence up to that point. The enemies were moving toward higher ground, walking in a line from below to above. Rem reached out and touched the left shoulder of the person walking in front of him. The person flinched and quickly turned around.
Good reaction speed.
As soon as Rem touched the left shoulder, he shifted to the right. His movements were ghostly fast and as quiet as a leopard. From the enemy's perspective, they felt a touch from behind on the left side, turned their gaze, and saw nothing. What followed was an axe strike. Rem swung his axe at the exposed neck as if splitting firewood. With a splatter cracking sound, blood spurted out. Blood splattered on Rem's cheek as it poured out. Instead of smiling, Rem observed the faces of those who turned around with his gray eyes. All were terrified, wide-eyed with fear. Those big, frightened eyes reminded him of herbivores, like deer. One might say that seeing such faces was part of the thrill of the hunt.
Ambush! Damn it, stop him!
Shouts and curses erupted, followed by frantic movements. As Rem lowered his body, the enemy responded. Specifically, 3 of them drew short swords with a swift motion. Again, Rem thought, good reactions. He shrugged his right shoulder and moved his left hand. It was a simple trick. Since he held the axe in his right hand, the enemy's attention was naturally drawn to it. As expected, their gazes focused on his right shoulder. In that moment, a hand axe flew from Rem's left hand, embedding itself in the forehead of the man holding a bow in the back. The impact lifted the man off his feet and sent him flying backward.
Spread out!
One of them shouted. Again, good reactions. Staying together meant death. Did they recognize the skill difference at a glance? Or was it just an instinctive command? Either way, it was timely. Despite the order to spread out, the three with swords charged at Rem. It was a coordinated action. Then the remaining 5 fled. They quickly scattered left and right, descending the rocky mountain, while one even began climbing higher. Out of the original 10, 2 were dead. Rem started swinging his axe, thinking. Naturally, they were no match for him. As they charged, he cut and sliced through them. His simple movements were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper to the enemies. Amidst the blood and the fallen, the gray-haired hunter covered in blood twitched his nose. The scent of humans spread through the stench of blood. The hunter, trained by his tribe, moved again. Rem had no intention of letting any of them escape.
What is this?
The hawk-eyed archer felt the sensation of being hunted intensely. It was utterly bewildering. Born in a mountain village of Aspen, he had a natural talent for archery from a young age. Becoming the village's best hunter by 15 was inevitable, at least to him. He hit his targets every time and knew precisely where to aim to kill. After leaving the village to become a mercenary, he gained fame, which eventually caught the attention of a noble. Subsequently, he served in the military. It was the beginning of a new life, promising status and wealth.
How about becoming a member of the principality?
He was on the verge of being adopted by the noble he had saved. Even though his adoptive father was not even 10 years older than him, it didn't matter. Status was what counted. Once he completed this mission and returned, that future was within reach.
I'll grant you a new estate.
Those were his adoptive father's words. The hawk could envision it, a future as a landowner, transcending his current status. Perhaps he could even marry his half-sister. Whiz, thud.
Gah.
Something struck the back of his thigh. The hawk rolled forward in excruciating pain. He hit his head on a rock with a thud. His vision blurred, spinning wildly. He had to catch his breath before he could see clearly.
Cough.
As his vision cleared, he felt his stomach churn. He coughed involuntarily, stifling a gag, and looked ahead.
You're quite the runner, aren't you?
Death stood before him, the Grim Reaper with gray hair.
How?
The hawk-eyed archer asked, his voice filled with questions. How had he been followed? How had he not noticed the approach? Rem didn't converse with his prey. An arrow, the same one he had shot, was now lodged in the hawk's neck. The arrowhead pierced through his soft throat and out the back of his neck. Blood bubbled and ran down his neck, staining the gray rocks red. Rem briefly admired the sight, then shook his hands clean. It had been a long time since he hunted, and the prey was disappointingly weak. Though it was unfortunate, it was already in the past. Acceptance and acknowledgement, agreement. The same thoughts persisted. Throughout the hunt, Rem had thought of his platoon leader. What would happen if he lived his life that way? It was a question that had been occupying his mind lately. Marcus led his troops in an advance toward the crossguard in just 2 days at a normal marching pace. No, it was even slower than normal. They took their time, resting as needed.
Will this work?
If it doesn't, what should they do then? Should they ask Enkrid, the one who proposed the plan? No, their lieutenants weren't that foolish.
If it doesn't work, we just retreat. Whether the enemy is deceived or not, they will have to be aware of us. Attacking the city outright would be a poor strategy, but this plan, who suggested it?
The platoon member who relayed the message through the ferry company commander, more precisely, through Enkrid. Was his name Kreis? It seemed there were no normal ones in that platoon. Even if it was a cunning plan, it was a good one. Pretend to attack the city while actually flanking with the troops. Link up with the main force's rear, blocking the enemy's escape route. If the enemy diverted their forces to defend the city or cover the flank, that would be a success. If they didn't react at all, that would also be a success. That was why the so-called Madman platoon was sent out. Even if they couldn't strike the enemy's rear, they could at least flick them and then retreat. Marcus thought that flick might be quite powerful.
Perhaps the strongest flick on the continent.
Pooh-ha-ha-ha. The thought made him chuckle. In any case, they followed the plan for 2 days, then assessed the situation for 3 to 4 days. After advancing for more than 4 days, they changed direction. They were returning. Marcus didn't rush the return journey either. He wanted to see them after all. His wish was fulfilled.
The Madman platoon, 7 men excluding the platoon leader, has returned.
The team that went on the guerrilla operation had come back.
Why aren't they here?
The special unit from the Duchy of Aspen, which included 3 junior knights, couldn't find any trace of the enemy. Shouldn't there be an army guarding the rear around here? Or at least some kind of trace or something? Aren't they supposed to be heading toward the cross guard? So why aren't they here? There's not even a scout unit checking our movements. Typically, before a serious fight, scout units meet, exchange some insults, maybe shoot some arrows, and then clash. We need to encounter them to engage, and we've even diverted some of our forces for that. No less than 3 junior knights. It means they pulled some members from the Knight Order, even though they have a giant and a few special forces on their side. At this level, it's a significant diversion of the main force, so they needed to fight. They needed to fight, but pebbles scattered under the feet of the commander. There's nothing. The only thing we saw on the way were a few ghouls coming out of the riverbank. Maybe traces of a camp from about 3 days ago?
What about the Hawk's Eyes? Lost contact.
Meanwhile, the guerrilla unit that was supposed to monitor this area and join up has disappeared too.
Do you think they're dead?
The junior knight, who was also the commander, asked. The lieutenant hesitated before speaking.
Yes, it seems that way.
What do you mean it seems that way? They're all dead, the commander thought. So, should we attack the rear? If we do, what will happen? Will they go wild like a horse with its tail on fire? I'm curious about Narilia's reaction. At that moment, someone spoke.
Signal fires have been lit.
A sharp-eyed messenger came running and reported. He had just crossed the mountain. The commander turned his gaze back. It was in the direction of the main force. When are signal fires lit? When the main force is in danger. So, what does it mean that they've lit the signal fires now?
Return.
The commander didn't hesitate. It was a decisive move. Thanks to rejoining the main force quickly, they avoided annihilation. After joining Marcus's infantry, Enkrid rarely spoke. The soldiers glanced at the madman platoon, but didn't easily strike up a conversation.
You're here?
At most, Vengeance would come and mutter a few words. Enkrid nodded briefly and walked. As he walked, he thought, and as he continued to think, he sank deeper into his thoughts, reflecting on the fight.
I couldn't use the sense of evasion.
The heart of the beast also required a long preparation to unleash. He fought as if piecing together everything he had.
Plant the left hand on the opponent's head. Cut with the right hand.
The foundation was showing in advance, and the heart of the beast. He did feel exhilaration in the fight itself. Some of the methods of using 2 swords worked. So what next? It was reflection. He revisited the fight in his mind. Just because it was a one battle, does it mean there is nothing to learn? No, there's always something to learn. The unit crossing the gravel-fitzroot headed straight to the rear of the main force. The march continued like this. After 3 days of eating, walking, and sleeping on repeat, they finally reached the Allied camp where they were originally stationed. Of course, whether or not the camp appeared was irrelevant to Enkrid. He was too busy reflecting and reflecting again. He didn't see or hear what was happening around him.
Basic skills.
How was the mustached man's swordsmanship? It was faithful to the basics, sharp and delicate, heavy and swift. It changed as much as necessary at the right moment. It's the difference in basic skills. Is winning or losing the problem? Of course, that's an issue too. It was a fight where losing meant dying. It would be pointless to intentionally lose a fight that could be won. Always do your best. Stand firm, even if it's just half a step, for a better tomorrow than today. Winning didn't eliminate the yearning and thirst. Did he think it was over just because he had mastered the basics?
Was I being arrogant?
Is this something that happens in life? Looking back at the past, where he was just struggling to survive, this was unimaginable. Enkrid reflected. It was only natural to hone the basics. Just look at training in the isolation technique. It's repetition every day. Repeating the same actions, whether it's Valaf-style martial arts, correct sword technique, or the path of magic. Refinement and swift recovery. Whatever it may be, basics and basics again. As soon as he thought that, he couldn't resist. His hands itched, his heart raced, and his skin tingled, even though they were still marching. He drew his sword, then vertically straight and proper, like a masterpiece honed and polished, his sword strike. It was a top-down strike, just like the mustached man's. In the middle of walking, he suddenly struck. One might have said something, but it was Enkrid who did it.
What's this? An ambush? Oh, is it platoon leader Enkrid? Isn't he a bit, you know?
One soldier twirled his finger around his ear.
Crazy platoon leader? Yeah, let's just keep going.
Everyone just let it slide. This wasn't the first time something like this happened. Moreover, no one was unaware of the Madman platoon's remarkable performance in the previous battlefield. They were almost seen as heroes. There was a mix of admiring and respectful glances.
They are so obsessed with training.
Is that why they fight so well? Such thoughts lingered in the soldiers' minds. Even the surrounding squad leader-level commanders left them alone. Perhaps there were special instructions from Battalion Commander Marcus. It was clear to anyone that they were being treated specially. Exempted from all duties, exempted from mess duty. These were among the reasons. Everyone just looked the other way. The Madman platoon members themselves didn't particularly care about the surrounding gazes. Ragnar watched his platoon leader, who suddenly swung his sword, and thought. He had something to say when they returned, but now it seemed pointless.
Get back to mastering the basics.
He had demonstrated severance, but he hadn't even started teaching yet. What needed to be built up for that? What needed to be reiterated? Would it become a wall of despair or a new milestone? It needed to be told and shown. There was much to say. Often, after improving their skills, people forget certain things. He intended to remind him of such things. Ragnar pondered deeply. What does his platoon leader need right now? After much thought, he gathered his words. The gravel field was coming to an end. Ragnar stopped walking.
Yes, that's correct.
And he muttered. The platoon leader didn't need nagging. He reflects and fills in what's lacking on his own. That's just the kind of person he is. Ragnar felt a tingling sensation throughout his body as he muttered to himself. The things he quickly forgot, the things he overlooked, the things he didn't even feel the need to reflect on. He builds them up one by one. He uses them as cornerstones. That's what the platoon leader did. Ragnar felt a flame of motivation igniting in his heart again. It seemed absurd, but seeing his platoon leader made him want to swing his sword.
Has he gone crazy? What is correct?
It was Rem walking beside him. The crazy barbarian tilted his head and spoke.
Heh, were you offering a prayer alone? Did the Lord respond?
On the other side, the big religious man also joined the conversation. Ragnar didn't want to reply. He didn't want to ruin his good mood. But Rem was persistent. Audin was diligent.
Hey, what's right? Did a ghost get into your head? Hey, big guy, shouldn't you do something about this? Huh? Don't you have a punch to get rid of ghosts?
Heh, brother, possession doesn't happen so easily. Especially in a disciplined unit like this. It's rare. I think he was praying. So, what did the Lord say?
I wish they'd just go away. Ragnar's wish quickly turned into murderous intent.
Should I just cut them all down?
The sudden burst of killing intent made both Rem and Audin react simultaneously.
Hey, are you planning to leave your head here? Need help? Brother, are you upset because you didn't receive the Lord's answer? If that's the case, sweating it out might not be a bad idea.
When the killing intent surfaces, they fight. It was almost like a rule in the Madman platoon. Of course, Enkrid could stop them, but he was currently lost in his own world. Ragnar drew his sword and swung it. Rem reacted too. The axe and sword met, sparks flying, and the killing intent spread between Ragnar and Rem. Audin, who was on the other side, couldn't just stand still. Ragnar didn't just watch him. Using the rebound from hitting Rem's axe, Ragnar slashed at Audin's chest. Audin stepped back, deflecting the blade with his palm, a high-level skill. Rem, Ragnar, and Audin. It was amazing how they could do such things without thinking much of it. Soon the three of them were engaged. Watching from the side, Jackson thought they were all fools. His eyes naturally shifted from the three to his platoon leader. He had a bit of dissatisfaction. The sense of evasion, he seemed to know how to do it, but is it hard to improve body coordination? It's not easy, definitely not easy, but doesn't this seem a bit unfair? He learned the heart of the beast so quickly. Why is the sense of evasion slower? Is he paying less attention? Putting less effort into my technique?
It's annoying.
Jackson muttered to himself, but no one responded. The three were too busy fighting. Andrew and Mac, not wanting to get caught up in the fight, moved away. Finn was busy questioning whether this platoon was functioning properly. Only Crace was accustomed to it, and did his job. He received orders through the ferry company commander in place of the platoon leader.
Why you?
The company commander complained unnecessarily.
If you interfere at times like this, both the platoon leader and the members get upset and it turns into chaos.
Kreis explained.
More chaotic than now.
Enkrid was walking and swinging his sword alone. The other three were busy fighting. Jackson remained stoic, sensing that it wouldn't be wise to intervene right now. It's chaotic enough already, though.
Yes, even more than now.
Kreis said with confidence. If we try to stop them, it'll get worse. He knew this from experience.
I see the main force is returning.
The company commander said, sticking to the main point without making unnecessary jokes or comments. Kreis, feeling mischievous, asked,
You want our platoon leader, don't you?
The company commander looked at Kreis. The fairy's green eyes were like jewels completing an inhumanly beautiful face. Like jewels, they were expressionless, and it was impossible for Kreis to read any emotion from them. However, he did sense something.
Indeed.
The company commander replied, turning and walking away. Kreis shivered and rubbed his arms. Then he waited for his platoon leader to return to normal. It was almost a whole day later, as they were stopping to prepare for camp, that Enkrid finally stopped. Does swinging a sword while walking actually help? Kreis had no idea. Surprisingly, the fight between the three, including Rem, ended quickly. Did they realize they wouldn't finish the fight as they were? Or maybe it wasn't fun since the platoon leader didn't intervene. Who knows? It's not something Kreis wanted to know.
Captain!
Enkrid, sweating profusely, looked at Kreis.
We're ordered to return to the city.
Kreis knew that his commander didn't like long explanations. Although he felt like talking more, he knew it was best to keep it short and clear.
It's because our plan worked! When the enemy diverted part of their forces to the alternate route, the main force launched an assault.
The essence of the plan Kreis originally devised was simple. The Madmen platoon would attack from the rear. They would draw in the unit known as the Hawk's Eyes or whatever, and wipe them out. Meanwhile, Marcus's battalion would pretend to advance towards the crossguard. Even just pretending was enough.
Already a losing battle.
If he were the enemy commander, how would he feel? Would he want to bear the shame of having the city attacked? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, there was nothing to lose. Even just pretending gained a lot. Kreis's goal was to ensure safety. By pretending, it gave Marcus's battalion a good excuse to return to their original position. He considered distancing themselves from the enemy as a given. As time passed, the variables decreased, and things fell into place as he had thought. Of course, there were things that didn't match Kreis's expectations at all. For instance, the strength of the Madmen platoon.
I knew they fought well, but
They fought exceptionally well. As an independent platoon, as an elite unit, they might be even more impressive than the slaughterers of the frontier. Later, they joined Marcus's battalion. Meanwhile, some forces, including the Night Order stationed in the Green Pearl Plains, advanced. This was slightly different from Kreis's expectation.
they're advancing.
Even if they ended it here, they would have expanded their territory and dealt a critical blow to Aspen. They didn't just advance and seize the advantage, they dealt a devastating blow. It was a charge without a break, followed by a battle. The difference in power was quite significant. He heard it was an overwhelming victory. Because of this, Marcus's battalion and the Border Guard Reserve unit were ordered to return to the city. In case some of the enemy forces went mad and attacked the city, they needed an army to defend it. Being a unit that had achieved merit, they likely wanted to give them some preferential treatment. Instead of explaining all of this, Kreis conveyed it simply and briefly.
We're ordered to go home.
Not bad.
Did Enkrid, the platoon leader, understand all this? He didn't know. He'd explain it slowly later. For now, they were allowed to go back. Kreis was quite satisfied with that. Above all, a map he held close to his chest made him feel even warmer. It was one of the treasures hidden by the enemy, and Kreis knew instinctively.
This is real.
Enkrid also had no complaints about returning. In fact, he was satisfied. He had learned and gained a lot from the recent battle. He wanted to reflect on it all and engrave it into his body. Therefore, he needed time. As a slow learner, he knew he needed to struggle and push forward. Enkrid decided to do just that. Yearning and thirst. They burned within him, making it impossible to remain still.
But why does that guy?
Enkrid turned his gaze towards the occasional feeling of killing intent. It was Jackson. Whenever he was about to forget, he felt those piercing glances. Jackson seemed to have some complaint, but it didn't seem like he would answer even if asked so. What could he do? He had to let it be. Their complaints weren't a new thing.
We're going back? You must be disappointed. Couldn't see the knights fight?
Rem chimed in sarcastically, and Enkrid nodded.
Disappointed, but
On the contrary, he didn't really mind. Matching his steps, Enkrid looked at his hands. His palms were full of calluses. The weight of the two swords hung at his waist, the armor draped over his body. Mew, the panther, which had returned at some point, walked alongside the platoon members. Enkrid was also walking, and, if he was confident in the path he was walking, there was no need to check the destination.
it's fine.
Enkrid answered and lifted his head. The magic of spring spread with the warm sunshine settling on his shoulders. 10 days after the retreat, on this day, even within the border guard, flowers began to bloom. It was a full-fledged spring. In the meantime, it rained once. Along with the news that the battlefield cleanup was in full swing, a series of victory reports continued to come in. In the end, word came that the Duchy of Aspen had requested peace. It was said that Naurelia had seized part of the territory of the Duchy of Aspen, soon to take over the Green Pearl Plains. Though this land had remained barren so far, it would take a lot of effort to cultivate it. A victory was a victory, and this one was a great victory. Cheers echoed at the end of the battlefield. With the arrival of spring, the number of people intoxicated by magic increased in such uplifting days. Enkrid's last 10 days were consistent. Nothing to change, nothing changed. Buzz, the sword swung.
Brother, it's not there yet. Hold your posture and sit straight. Straighten your back, inhale, and feel the pressure in your abdomen. If the pressure is released, your back will break.
Auden chuckled as he spoke, strengthening the body with a method that was close to a trick, such as sitting up and down with Auden on his back, was also a daily routine. Sword, training, sparring. Time focused solely on these 3 things. Whether others were excited or not was of no concern to Enkrid. Kreis wandered around everywhere, but Enkrid had no such thing. In the rank of platoon leader, recognized as an independent platoon, and perhaps due to his influence in the previous battlefield, there was no duty. It was 10 days solely devoted to rest. Of course, for Enkrid, it was 10 days immersed in training. However, there was a change.
Whew.
Nearby, among the soldiers belonging to the unit, those who knew and fought with Enkrid had a different attitude. All of them were busy wielding their spears from early morning. This tendency had been visible for some time, and now the number of soldiers engrossed in training had increased significantly. They all sweated and were genuinely dedicated to wielding their spears and strengthening their bodies. There was also another change.
Excuse me, can you give me some guidance?
Among the soldiers, some began to seek out Enkrid.
Me.
He was in the middle of a break, sweating and swinging his sword. Enkrid pointed to himself with his finger and asked back. It made sense. It was an unimaginable scene. Him teaching someone? Guidance? Considering his past life, Enkrid's life hadn't been easy enough to say such a thing. He had never looked beyond the path of learning and progressing, especially teaching. Could there be a word that didn't suit him as much as that?
Give it a try.
Rem, who had been watching from the side, said. He seemed to have been watching even though he looked like he was dozing off. Enkrid nodded. He had been thinking of trying it anyway. Right in front, he saw the eyes of the soldier looking at him. That earnestness, the longing and thirst that still burned within him, he saw in the soldier's eyes too. Enkrid shook his sword and struck the tip of the soldier's spear. The soldier holding the spear flinched and his shoulders trembled. How skilled was he? From what he had learned from Auden, he could tell by the posture and the level of physical training. The soldier seemed to be somewhat skilled.
Lower-ranked soldier, Paulid.
The soldier spoke. Enkrid listened with one ear and let it pass through the other. He simply focused. He didn't treat it lightly. Concentrating and observing the opponent, that was his best, and he believed it was the only thing he could do. The soldier, Paulid, swallowed nervously and took his stance. Left hand forward, right hand back. A stance specialized for thrusting, with his feet crossed front and back. He shah as he thrust his spear. He seemed to be a somewhat trained soldier. Enkrid watched the incoming spearhead carefully. Seeing and reacting, his body moved. Even if he hadn't mastered it perfectly, the skill that flowed naturally was his sense of evasion. He twisted his body to the side, extending his left arm and caught the spear shaft from below with his palm facing up.
Eek.
The soldier reflexively pulled the spear back. Seeing the veins in his neck, it was clear he was using all his strength. Enkrid grabbed the spear shaft, pivoted on his left foot, and turned inside the spear's arc. It was as if he grabbed and turned with his left hand while spinning. Planting his right foot on the ground, he pulled the spear shaft with his left hand, using his body as leverage. No extraordinary strength was needed, just a bit of technique and a moderate amount of strength. Lightly, he brought his sword down from above. The sword, without lethal intent, tapped the top of the soldier's head. Of course, it was the flat of the blade, not the edge. Feeling the sword on his hair, the soldier opened his mouth in surprise.
Ah.
It seems to be over.
Oh, yes.
When Enkrid released the spear shaft, the soldier awkwardly gathered his weapon and stood there, embarrassed.
Well, is there something I'm lacking?
What did it mean to be a somewhat experienced soldier? It was like saying he had some confidence in his skills. But he asked Enkrid such a question. What was Enkrid like before? Back when his squad was known as the Crazy Platoon and he was the troublemaker. He seemed to have been the one everyone laughed at. But now, someone was asking him such a question? Looking closely, the face wasn't unfamiliar. They had crossed paths a few times before. The battlefield so far hadn't been easy, so the soldier in front of him could be called a veteran. He also wore the insignia symbolizing a squad leader. What could it be? What was this? Enkrid looked at him with curiosity. The soldier, despite his embarrassment, waited patiently. Enkrid saw the soldier's eyes again, earnestness, longing, and thirst. There was a glimpse of desire for something unattainable. It was like the longing coiled within him. He couldn't ignore it. To be honest, he could see what the other needed after just one sparring session.
It would be good to build up your strength.
The spear was heavier than it looked. For such a weapon, the soldier lacked strength.
Yes, thank you.
The squad leader saluted. Enkrid nodded in response. After that day, the squad leader dedicated himself to strength training, lifting heavy objects to build muscle. His squad members did the same. It was said that a wave of strength training and training swept through the unit. Wasn't this a unit that had just returned from the battlefield? Wasn't it time to celebrate the victory? Of course, many went to the city to unwind. Some just drank heavily day after day. Some of them probably thought that spending the day in the red light district was better than training for the future. Enkrid didn't particularly criticize them. What did it matter to him? He was just a platoon leader, the leader of an independent platoon. At the moment, he couldn't even step onto the battlefield where lesser knights were active. It would be a lie to say he wasn't curious about their battles. However, his mindset remained the same. If he could see his destination, there was no need to look around while walking his path. If it were a battle involving Sir Cyprus, it might have been different. A true knight, one known across the entire continent, how would it feel to see that? He felt he would want to see it. Who knows? You can only know things when they happen.
Is it fun?
Rem, who'd been watching indifferently, asked with a slight smile instead of laughing. Fun? He didn't really know.
I don't know.
As always, he answered honestly. Rem finally laughed. Enkrid immersed himself in training again, in that time of immersion.
Can I have a turn as well?
Another person approached, suggesting a sparring session. After a quick bout, Enkrid gave a piece of advice.
Your footing is stiff.
Another person approached for another sparring session.
You should relax your shoulders.
Another piece of advice. After a few more sparring sessions,
Can I?
he asked without any clear subject, but there was no need to ask what he meant. His eyes burned with intensity as he asked, and his cautious demeanor revealed signs of nervousness. He had a relatively youthful face, probably around Andrew's age or maybe even younger.
Well, sure.
No one among the platoon members stepped in to stop him. Usually, didn't he always have something to say to those who approached him? He used to pick fights unnecessarily. Why was he just letting it slide now? Most of the soldiers were equipped with spears. If someone used a different kind of weapon, it could mean that they belonged to a special unit. The soldier facing him held a battle hammer the length of his forearm. The end of the hammer was round and polished, indicating it wasn't a weapon used for just a day or two. It didn't look heavy, but it was clearly an efficient weapon. As he twirled his wrist, it was clear that he had mastered the technique.
I'm with the border guard.
Sure enough, as the soldier spoke, Enkrid nodded indifferently. The soldier's eyes gleamed as he twirled the battle hammer by twisting his wrist. To Enkrid, the soldier's intentions were all too obvious. Perhaps he had grown too accustomed to the Valen mercenary sword technique. The opponent's tactics and tricks were plain to see. Tap, tap, tap. As the soldier swung the hammer with all his might, he abruptly switched to holding it with one hand and brought it down vertically. Dodging was the right move rather than blocking. Following the soldier's intention, Enkrid stepped aside, avoiding the trajectory of the hammer. The soldier reached for his waist with his other hand. Enkrid grabbed the soldier's wrist before his elbow could fully extend.
I can see it.
He said this as he realized what was happening. The tactic was simple and clear. The hammer was a distraction for a short-range dagger throw. It was similar to the Valen mercenary sword technique.
Valen mercenary sword technique,
he asked. The soldier nodded.
You should refine your hammer-wielding technique more.
Enkrid instinctively pointed out the soldier's weakness. At the same time, he realized that this was advice he needed to hear as well. Improving his hammer technique would help conceal the dagger better. Avoid drawing attention to the dual blade technique from the start. The soldier had ample talent. It reminded him of the day that young kid put a hole in his stomach. Back then he had fallen without much resistance. And now, he recalled something one of the instructors had once said.
Improving your skills starts with knowing where you stand.
Awareness, realization. To move forward on a new path, one must first understand where they currently stand. Sparring sessions and teachings continued, and many continued to seek out Enkrid. Each time, Enkrid realized something new and advanced. His steps were slow, but he didn't rush. Observing a soldier thrusting a spear hastily, he learned that haste was of no help. There were also those who, amidst calmness, exhibited decisive action.
I'm Ruth.
He introduced himself as a friend from the western part of the border guard. He glanced at Rem as he spoke, but he didn't seem to pay him any mind. Enkrid defeated him as well. An easy opponent? No, a challenging one. However, Enkrid had experienced so much that he found it easy to deal with him.
You're strong.
Ruth exclaimed in admiration as he turned away. As he left, he looked only at Enkrid, not at Rem. As more people sought him out over the 10 days, Kreis began to impose order.
There are too many. It would be better to sort them out. You know what happens if they disturb our leader, right?
The weight of Kreis's words had changed. With Rem, Jackson, Auden, and Ragna behind him, they were all nodding in agreement while looking at their platoon leader. How does one see where they stand? They must look up, down, left, and right. Only then can one see their position. It was a moment that each of them had crossed at some point. In fact, Enkrid was somewhat late to this realization. With spring here, he was 31. By continental standards, he could be considered an old mercenary. Though there were plenty of people who continued to fight past 40. No one could do it quite like Enkrid. That's why there was satisfaction in watching this man. Auden found answers to his questions from the Lord and the platoon leader. Rem recalled fragments of his memories from the past. Jackson pondered what it meant to live as Enkrid did, and envisioned the future. Ragnar reflected on swords and people, ambition and life, knights, and the power they wield, realizing anew. He realized that he too had taken up that path, and he would continue to walk that path. With a deeper conviction than ever, he realized the value the platoon leader held for him. A late-blooming genius, that was the best way to describe Enkrid. Changing the surrounding soldiers, well, that was something separate from being a genius. For the soldiers around him, especially those who didn't just dwell in today, but had the will to move toward tomorrow, Enkrid became a symbol of change. He became an idol for those who wished to emulate him. All of this was encapsulated in the command,
All troops line up.
recognition ceremony. It became evident during the recognition ceremony. Normally, the entire assembly of soldiers gathered in the bustling training grounds, everyone except a few soldiers on duty. It was time to acknowledge the merits of those involved in the recent battles. Who was the main figure of this gathering? Everyone knew. Marcus was different from the previous battalion commander. With a few nobles seated in the back, Marcus stood on the platform and began his speech.
If I have to tell you who made the greatest contribution in the last battle, then that person's head wouldn't be good enough even as a helmet stand.
Marcus's loud and deep voice resonated with the soldiers, his rough language and coarse words. Some of the nobles who listened to Marcus on the platform frowned. Wasn't this lacking in decorum, however? For those who were the subject of his words, it sounded different to the soldiers. There was sincerity in his words. Marcus, who had made up his mind, spoke with genuine feeling.
I will call up the one with the highest merit. No, platoon leader of the independent platoon, Enkrid.
Everyone knew what the missing word M stood for, and someone walked up to the platform before the assembled troops. A man walking with bare hands, drenched in sweat, came into the soldiers' view. Even though the temperature was gradually rising, it wasn't enough to cause such sweating, but no one questioned or looked at him with doubt. Clearly, he had been swinging his sword numerous times before coming to this place. That was the kind of person Enkrid was. One who proved himself by continually swinging his sword, one who demonstrated his worth by pouring out what he had learned. A person who never took anything lightly, a paragon of sincerity. The crazy platoon leader, Enkrid, walked towards the platform. No one in the assembled training ground spoke easily. In that peculiar silence, the heat surged. For those who had experienced the victory on the battlefield, what kind of figure was Enkrid? He had become an idol for some. He had become a hero for others. That was who he was on the battlefield. Marcus did not forget that. On the platform, one man stood facing another. Between the tall leaves behind the platform, petals of red and pink flowers fluttered in the air. Yellow flowers blossomed brightly in the flower garden behind the training ground. The scent of sweat mingled with the presence of a flower garden in a place of swords and spears. They say it was a remnant from the time when the border guard was still a trading city. Maintaining that flower garden was something akin to the duty of the battalion commander who was responsible for the city. It was a testament to the city's safety, they said. Spring had come after a long winter. Perhaps these flowers hadn't been seen in a while.
They are a symbol of this city's safety.
A florist had said those words. Several florists in the city were responsible for maintaining the border guard's flower garden. Seeing the flowers brought to mind the importance of relaxing one's shoulders. It's important not to be too tense. Loose, but not slack. Even if it didn't quite fit, sometimes it's necessary to relax while looking at flowers. As Enkrid relaxed his shoulders, he noticed that the shape of the petals resembled straight swords. What was the name of those flowers? Red leaves that were sharp. He clearly remembered their nickname. Sword flower. They were called sword flowers. They were said to bloom only in the magic of spring. As he looked at the sword flowers, a question arose. How can I make a cleaner cut when bringing the sword down vertically? With that question, a journey of thought began in his mind to find the answer. That mustache. A man who walked a path entirely different from Enkrid's. Something refined that he hadn't even felt in Ragnar's sword. A sword built through both talent and effort. It resonated with him, so he wanted it. He wanted to possess it, to absorb it completely. He still longed for it, feeling a thirst, like a traveler in the desert craving a sip of water. For Enkrid, it was swords and knights, dreams and skills.
Slowly.
If you run too fast, you're bound to trip and fall. Moreover, has anything ever gone well when done hastily? Even without talent, there's something to be seen when you don't despair and lose hope. It's about not being hasty and not being leisurely. A middle ground between two opposing speeds, loose but not slack. That's why you can run as fast as you can at your own pace. With these thoughts, Enkrid moved towards the platform. At the end of his thoughts stood the platform, and in front of it was Marcus. They stood facing each other and looked into each other's eyes. There was a silent exchange. Marcus's eyes softened into a gentle smile. It was a look as if he was up to some amusing prank. The training ground was quiet. How to describe it? The atmosphere itself was different. A warm afternoon breeze blew in between the rays of sunlight. The petals swayed in the breeze. It was a peaceful and serene afternoon. It reminded him of the time when the divinity of Auden touched his body. That sense of tranquility enveloped the surroundings.
I have been pondering.
Marcus spoke. His voice resonated quietly, not loud enough to reach across the training ground, but audible to those nearby.
What do you mean?
Enkrid replied, standing straight.
What should I give to satisfy a soldier who has achieved such a commendable feat?
Marcus mused. Enkrid's mind briefly considered a good sword or something like Krona. Would that truly satisfy him? Probably not. It might bring some joy, but if he were to go a step further…
A magical armor.
Enkrid now roughly understood the value of the leather armor he wore, and that its worth was gradually diminishing. Magic isn't eternal after all. He had heard that magical equipment has its limits, although he wasn't sure if that was true until he experienced it himself. The lifespan of the leather armor wasn't much longer. Even the leather gauntlets seemed to be somewhat magical. Otherwise, how could they be so strong? Without these gauntlets, he might have lost an arm while fighting Frog, not just injured his wrist.
The thought alone is dreadful.
Losing just a wrist would be better than losing an entire arm, but both options were undesirable. In retrospect, there were countless things to be cautious about. Losing one's life, as terrible as it sounds, sometimes it could be a relief. But if one were to survive with a severe injury, facing the uncertainty of tomorrow…
It gives me a lot to think about.
Yet Enkrid hadn't been deeply troubled by these thoughts. He wasn't the type to overthink, nor did he have the luxury to do so.
Idle thoughts.
These weren't just relaxing thoughts, but distractions. He pushed them aside, knowing that it wasn't enough to immerse himself solely in his sword and dreams. Could he truly become a knight? He still had that question, and there was no answer yet.
So I thought.
Marcus continued. Enkrid focused on the man's words before him. He listened intently with genuine attention.
I too need to give a sincere gift. You can look forward to it, platoon leader.
The word expect was mentioned. Enkrid knew himself well enough not to show emotions over most things. Honestly, he had no expectations. Later, Marcus, the battalion commander, presented him with Krona and a finely crafted dagger. It was said to be a dagger awarded only to those who had rendered great service to the royal family. Upon receiving it, he found the balance to be poor. It wasn't practical, serving only as a symbol of status.
By bestowing upon you the royal dagger, your status is guaranteed. Show it at any time in the capital, and you will be welcomed as a guest of the royal family.
Enkrid thought it was really nothing special. Sincerely, however, the soldiers watching from below the platform felt differently.
Enkrid, Enkrid, Enkrid.
There were no childish cheers or shouts of victory. The soldiers simply chanted Enkrid's name. It was a murmur, an everyday utterance, just words from their mouths. But when hundreds of soldiers spoke as one,
Enkrid,
it struck his ears like a roar.
It seems they're more pleased than you are. Turn around.
Marcus said. Enkrid turned around at Marcus's words. It was quite an amusing sight. It had been 10 days since he returned from the battlefield to the city. He felt closer to those in the unit than before. Those who had previously made crude remarks about him had now bowed their heads. Those seeing him for the first time showed respect and admiration. He had already been acknowledged on the battlefield. The battalion commander had once called for cheers. But whom was that cheer really for? He had thought it was a good experience, but this was different. The platform was high, just enough for one person to stand on, so he could look down from above. He could feel the heat emanating from all the soldiers, as if that heat took shape and enveloped him. He suddenly realized that what he had accomplished had brought him to this moment.
What makes a knight?
Skill? They said that merely being good with a sword didn't make one a knight.
If that's all you wanted, you should have just been a mercenary.
The words of a fencing instructor from some city still echoed in his mind. At that time he had asked, "What makes a knight? What do you see and call a knight?"
Skill is essential.
On top of skill, honor and achievements accumulate, proving one's worth.
Though things have changed a bit nowadays, in the past, when discussing legends, that was the standard.
Did he just want to be someone who swung a sword well? No, that wasn't it, though his dreams started that way when he was young. As he grew older and realized the limits of his talent, when he got stabbed in the belly by a sword from someone much younger, when he lost comrades, he realized that skill and character did not necessarily correlate. He swung his sword even though he knew his limits, with a single-minded focus, as if each moment could be his last. Living each day as if there was no tomorrow, he threw himself into the relentless waves of time. Even as he was swept away, he never forgot his sword, holding on to his worn and tattered dreams. Where did the resolve that sustained Enkrid all this time originate? He believed a knight was someone who adhered to the standards they set for themselves. someone who progressed without forgetting honor. He resolved to be that way. Thus, it made sense that standing in such a position, proving himself, would bring him joy. Feeling honor as he stood before them.
Interesting.
Enkrid murmured softly, though it was hard to discern any emotion from his voice. Behind him, Marcus sensed something unfamiliar in Enkrid's words. It was the same as before, something long forgotten, sword and light.
Is it passion?
Marcus smiled, thinking Enkrid was quite an interesting person. He was curious about how the gift he had prepared would affect the man before him, dismissed. Marcus said. Enkrid turned and saluted. He stepped down through the murmuring soldiers who chanted his name. A path opened between the soldiers standing to the sides.
You must be happy.
He saw his platoon members greeting him. There was Rem, smirking, Jackson, standing casually with one leg propped up, watching indifferently. Auden, speaking in his usual cryptic way, said,
You looked like an incarnation answering a prayer, brother.
Ragna, who was always bored with such ceremonies, asked,
Are we done here?
Kreis, uninterested unless Krona was involved, simply said, Nice. Nearby, Andrew and Mac called his name, faces flushed with excitement.
Enkrid, platoon leader.
This was more than just not bad. It would be strange not to enjoy it.
Let's go back.
But nothing had changed. It had been 10 days since their return, and the border guard had been quiet. The awards ceremony was over. So what was next? Of course, it was training. He was just pondering how to swing his sword next.
Hey, tonight we party. Let's eat and drink till we drop.
Marcus revealed his true feelings on the platform. Was it really okay for the battalion commander to be so candid? Weren't those people behind him nobles? Sure enough, when Enkrid turned, he saw a group of nobles with displeased expressions. Yet, no one stepped forward to say anything. What could it be? Did they threaten to behead anyone who spoke up? No, that's something Rem would do, he thought. Marcus was a commander from the capital. He had no reason or need to do something so reckless. So why were the nobles reacting this way? Enkrid decided to ignore the nobles' affairs. There was no need to delve into it. What good would it do to know? Knowing wouldn't change anything.
Party. Sounds good, great.
The soldiers shouted, almost bursting his eardrums.
If they serve us some cheap wine after saying all this, I'd feel like smashing that guy's head with my axe.
Rem said with a grin, but he seemed in a good mood. The problem was that he wanted to smash a superior's head whenever he was happy. Well, it's not my head, so that's a relief. Enkrid thought. Thinking back, Rem had never seriously threatened to split his head open. He had joked about wanting to see what was inside his head, but that wasn't said in earnest.
It's a bother.
Ragna said bluntly. Enkrid felt like agreeing with Ragna. He wanted to get back to training. He was eager to assimilate the techniques of the mustached swordsman he had seen and experienced as soon as possible.
You can't see anything but stiff things with a stiff mind. You need to rest when it's time to rest.
Jackson said, seemingly perceptive enough to notice Enkrid's mood.
Everyone take a good rest. I'll be back shortly,
said Kreis, whose voice trailed off as he ran away. Whenever a party was held, a gambling den would naturally spring up, and that meant Kreis would be in his element. He didn't gamble, but rather organized the games to take a cut of the profits. Kreis could never understand those who squandered their krona on gambling.
Seriously, why throw your krona at a random draw? If you meet a real gambler, you won't even get a random chance. You'll definitely lose,
he would say. He saw no reason to waste krona on gambling. It made sense. Kreis disappeared into the crowd of soldiers. Enkrid watched his retreating figure, finding it odd that this big-eyed soldier had come up with such a clever scheme.
No need to split heads then, my barbaric brother.
Odin murmured from behind. Up ahead, the battalion commander was seen raising a bottle of liquor with enthusiasm.
This is some good liquor. Today we're all drinking the same. Any objections? If you have a problem, come to me.
It seemed he wasn't quite in his right mind either. Marcus shouted for everyone to enjoy the liquor he offered. As Enkrid watched, Finn approached and said,
Want a drink?
It had been a while since he had even thought about drinking. There hadn't been an occasion. He had been too busy training. Drinking dulled the body's control, making proper training impossible. Enjoying the party and drinking were two separate things. So, he was about to politely decline when a voice came from behind.
No, human woman, that spot is mine. He's my fiancé.
Huh?
Fiancé, but she's a fairy,
Finn muttered. Enkrid took a step back. The ferry company commander approached silently.
Drink with me.
Was this an order or an invitation? As the tension built with the arrival of Finn and the ferry company commander, Esther intervened. With a fierce cry, Esther leapt into Enkrid's arms. The situation felt strange.
Damn, Enchantress.
Rem muttered. Before Enkrid could clarify the misunderstanding, the soldiers around them began cheering for him again, this time in a different way.
Squad leader of enchantment.
Damn it. Just when he thought it had been forgotten, the nickname Enchantment surfaced again. A festival of enchantment, drinking, and partying. Was there ever a party like this? When was the last time there was something similar to a banquet? Enkrid tried to recall. It seemed to be the first in many years. It was certainly the first time in the border guard, and even for Enkrid personally, it was a rare moment, experienced only a few times in his life. He did enjoy something like a banquet back in his mercenary days. What did he do then? He only wetted his lips and focused on the aftermath of the fights.
Let's have a drink, platoon leader.
There were many people offering drinks, not just Finn and the company commander.
Come on, when it's time to have fun, let's have fun. Don't be so boring.
Even Rem was saying this. He did drink. He had said he didn't enjoy it, not that he couldn't drink. A sip, the sharp aroma tickled his nose as the sweet liquid flowed down his throat, warming his stomach.
It's not bad.
Though he wasn't a natural gourmand or drinker, his experience eating and drinking in various places wasn't significant. It was said that a poor wanderer could eat anything, but also had the ability to evaluate everything that entered his mouth.
There must have been some krona in this.
The battalion commander must have really opened his wallet. No, to be precise, it was the border guard treating them, right? Surely they didn't cover this out of their own pocket. Anyway, they ate, drank, and enjoyed themselves. When he decided to rest, he did so with all his might, knowing that proper rest was essential for preparing for the next challenge. However,
the starlight is so beautiful tonight.
It was indeed a good night, with the moon and stars adorning the sky. It felt almost too nice just for drinking.
Just a little to wet the lips is enough, brother. Are you challenging me to arm wrestling? Very well.
Auden's voice of enjoyment could be heard from one side.
You bastard, are you being difficult again?
Rem's voice picking a fight.
It's just not to my taste.
Ragnar's retort. But where did Jackson go? Did they say he went to the city? Jackson wasn't the type to fit into a banquet. Enkrid settled into a chair. Everyone was busy eating and drinking. There were soldiers excitedly chatting, others mixing stories with half-curses. Every so often, not just Finn and the company commander, but many others were engaging with Enkrid as well. In fact, he was probably the most popular one.
I always knew you'd see the light one day.
It was Bell, the one who almost died from an arrow, if not for Enkrid's intervention. You could say his fate changed because of Enkrid.
So you want to spar?
Enkrid joked.
But, no, what sparring? They say you can even take down the border guard.
I was lucky.
Luck, a phrase that had become a catchphrase.
Is that something that happens by luck?
Bell grumbled but laughed. It was a very bright laugh. Then Vengeance approached.
And you, why?
He took a deep breath, then said, "Never mind. Let's just drink," and turned away abruptly. In the past, Enkrid might not have understood, but now he knew Vengeance's feelings. Though his comfort was only in words, sitting down, if it reached the other person, it held meaning.
The world is big.
Enkrid consoled him as if reciting an infantry motto.
There are plenty of women.
Vengeance's steps halted. What emotions were contained in that? Why sigh? Wasn't it jealousy and envy? It was probably because he saw the ferry company commander and Finn inviting Enkrid to drink, along with some of the waitress's peculiar looks. Was the comfort appropriate? Vengeance turned his upper body around, his eyes seeming to burn with a ghostly flame.
You bastard.
Seeing this, Enkrid thought the comfort was indeed appropriate. Isn't it much better to see him blooming with passion rather than being despondent?
Jenny.
Enkrid pretended to be surprised and looked behind Vengeance. Vengeance's head turned sharply. Jenny, the herb seller, could be considered Vengeance's Achilles' heel. The first reason he hated Enkrid was because of her. As Vengeance confirmed there was nothing, specifically no Jenny behind him, he turned his head back toward Enkrid, making a peculiar sound. It sounded like something you'd hear from a newly born skeletal soldier's neck.
You bastard, a duel it is.
Ah, a duel. I was planning to rest today, but it couldn't be helped. This wasn't my decision.
Shall we?
Enkrid straightened up. Vengeance immediately regretted it after speaking. He knew from experience that he wasn't Enkrid's match, but how could he tolerate being mocked like this?
They're gonna fight! Who? Platoon leader Vengeance, right? Who's the opponent? Oh, it's the squad leader of Enchantment.
That word, enchantment. Even though Enkrid heard the words of the surrounding soldiers in one ear and out the other, he couldn't easily dismiss the word enchantment. It seemed like a word that didn't quite fit him. He had a similar experience before. Did Auden call him stubborn? Stubborn? Not at all. And enchantment was the same. Not at all. A misunderstanding.
Where's the fight? Wait, hold on. For a contest, you need a bet.
Kreis suddenly appeared from among the group of soldiers. He looked at Enkrid's face, and then at Vengeance.
Though no one knew, the platoon leader skilled in the secret art of assassination is Platoon Leader Vengeance. Who wants to bet on Platoon Leader Vengeance with Krona?
No one spoke up. The bet wasn't made. Vengeance swung his sword with all his might. Enkrid wasn't careless. As always, he focused, his eyes shining. Watching the descending sword, he moved his body. There was no hesitation. Enkrid raised his sword horizontally to block the attack, then tripped Vengeance and struck his thigh with his knee. It was a mix of basic and unconventional techniques. Vengeance fell after being struck on the side of his thigh. Enkrid felt somewhat unsatisfied, like the feeling of stopping midstream while urinating. A single strike, and it was over. Wasn't Vengeance a soldier aspiring to a higher rank?
The soldier ranking system, isn't it supposed to be an evaluation or something?
Enkrid recalled Rem's words for no reason. He looked around, wondering if there was anyone like Rem nearby. Many were watching him with strange expressions, filled with admiration. Seeing this, Enkrid furrowed his brow, then relaxed it. It was a look that only Kreis noticed, as if he was displeased with something. He didn't want admiration. He wanted someone to challenge him. People requesting duels had increased for a while, but had become rare recently. Even the Border Guard Reserve Unit hadn't been challenging him much. He thought he had seen the Border Guard Reserve Unit commander among the soldiers earlier. The company commander seemed to be around as well. Could he count on them? Enkrid's eyes searched for the two. It wasn't hard to find them. They had caught his eye earlier. However, the heavily armored company commander was already quite drunk. The Border Guard Reserve Unit commander didn't seem inclined to step forward at all. The commonality between them was that they were holding drinks and didn't look like they wanted to fight.
I was going to ask you to have a drink.
The company commander, with a flushed face, turned away, saying,
That guy is definitely crazy.
As the commander's gaze turned towards him, Enkrid glanced behind himself. He wondered if Rem was there, given that he had been called crazy. But there was no one there. Then who? At least, it didn't seem directed at him. Enkrid thought of himself as one of the only sane members of the Madman platoon.
What can I say? Should I say it meets expectations? Should I nod, acknowledging the lack of sanity?
The Border Guard Reserve Unit commander left after saying that. The ferry company commander and Finn were watching him from one side. Below them was Esther. The blue-eyed panther yawned and then quickly turned its head. Had it just tried to cover its mouth with its paw? That paw wouldn't cover its mouth well. That panther seemed almost human. Enkrid thought about sheathing his sword. He felt like he had been interrupted mid-action, like stopping an important conversation halfway. But what could he do? There wasn't anyone suitable to engage with. In that moment and situation, a conversation caught his ear from one side.
Are you really going to do it? Yeah.
A conversation caught his ear. Simultaneously, Enkrid felt a thrilling sensation prickling his skin, as if an illusion of a sword appeared. Instinctively, Enkrid's hand went to his sword's hilt. It felt like he might have to draw his sword and fight at any moment. He turned to look. Andrew appeared. He wasn't just standing there. He was drawing his sword, ready to strike at any time. The determination in Andrew's actions was evident. As Andrew drew his sword, the starlight and torchlight played across his face in a duet of blue and red. He hadn't been drinking, and his complexion was calm. Standing there, Andrew spoke.
I learned the swordsmanship of the Gardner family, honed it in real battles, and learned that there is no giving up in learning.
Mac, who had been standing beside him, had stepped back. The surrounding soldiers did the same. stepping back to make space. Now in the center, only Enkrid and Andrew remained. One had his hand on the hilt, the other had already drawn his sword. Without losing momentum, Andrew continued.
I seek your teaching.
Enkrid looked into Andrew's eyes for a moment, unwavering pupils burning with passion instead of admiration. Eyes he liked very much in that instant. The sound of a torch flaring up was heard nearby. A pleasant night breeze blew. The saying that spring has magic, he had heard it so many times it had become tiresome.
That saying.
It seemed true. Instead of responding, Enkrid looked up at the sky. A night adorned with moonlight and starlight, a cascade of stars was present. Enkrid lowered his head and spoke.
Isn't this a great night for a fight?
He meant it. It felt like a waste to have a feast on such a night. Yes, if it had been any other night, if the starlight hadn't shone down on him so, he might have just enjoyed the feast. But tonight was too precious for that.
Then,
Andrew raised his sword. Enkrid faced him. Their relationship had started as scouts, but it now once again. Andrew's sword danced. It was a skillful sword, focusing on speed and exploiting the opponent's weaknesses. Enkrid faced him with caution and focus. He gave everything he had. It was only right. When the opponent shows their best and sincerity, one must respond in kind. Esther thought it was truly fascinating.
Today is truly special.
It was a night thick with magic. Sensitive people could feel that something was different on such nights. Perhaps that was why they couldn't stay still and were restless. The fight wasn't long, and the outcome was clear.
All right, those who bet on Krona!
Crace's voice rang out louder and clearer than ever. He was perhaps the busiest and most enthusiastic person that night. The sound came as Andrew fell backward. There hadn't been dozens of exchanges of blows. The outcome was decided even before 10 strikes were exchanged. Enkrid offered his hand to help Andrew up after knocking him down. He asked, suddenly curious.
Are you thinking of leaving?
Yes.
Andrew answered with a deep breath.
Why?
I have things to do.
Well, if he had to go, he had to go. One cannot hold back someone who is determined to leave.
It was enjoyable. Yes, Captain.
Andrew smiled. In some ways, he seemed like a younger brother. He gave off that kind of feeling.
But I will keep moving forward.
Enkrid nodded in response to Andrew's words. For some, it was a feast to drink heavily. For others, it was a gambling session to win some krona. For yet others, it was a gathering to affirm camaraderie. And for Enkrid, it was a feast under the starlight, perfect for a good duel. After that, a few more enthusiastic individuals challenged him, changing the atmosphere. He welcomed it. Thus, the night of eating, drinking, and fighting passed. Enkrid slept and woke up at dawn as usual. The morning training began. Regardless of the night of the feast, duties had to be performed. He headed to the training ground. There he found an unexpected guest. The party continued until midnight. The duty was taken over by another battalion that hadn't participated in the combat.
Thank you for your help.
Marcus spoke to his subordinate commander with gratitude.
It's no problem.
The commander readily accepted Marcus's request. Why wouldn't he? Who was Marcus, after all? He was no ordinary battalion commander. Once he returned to the capital, he would assume a new identity. He was a noble, one of the 5 families holding significant power.
So then,
the commander left, and Marcus set down the bottle of alcohol he had been holding. For the sake of the troops' morale, he had done something out of character. He preferred tea over alcohol. In fact, he had a habit of mixing tea with alcohol when he did drink. He also preferred quiet places over noisy ones.
Is it because of the education I received as a child?
Perhaps it was the influence of the tea ceremony he learned from his family. It wasn't important. He had gotten used to it and saw no need to change a habit that had become second nature. Marcus leisurely sipped his tea. The noise from the party reached even his quarters. Although they had banned inviting prostitutes, many would likely head to the red light district after drinking. Today was a time to show leniency rather than strict control. He planned to let most things slide. As he passed the time, a few familiar commanders stopped by. Some were conscious of his power. Others sought him out because they liked his battlefield persona, associated with the nickname Warmonger. All the company commanders had arrived except for one.
The ferry company commander is missing.
Not that it mattered. Whether she was currying favor or trying to share a drink with him, both would seem laughable. He continued to chat, drinking tea mixed with alcohol. As the sun set and the moon rose, Marcus retired early to bed. He slept soundly, without dreams. In the quiet,
Commander.
the voice of his guard and the sound of knocking woke Marcus.
What is it?
He glanced out the window. It was still before dawn, the sky mixing blue and orange hues signaling the start of a new day.
A guest has arrived.
It was an unusually early time for a visitor. Who would come at such an hour? The visitor was likely someone beyond human etiquette and noble power. Marcus wasn't surprised. He hadn't expected the visitor so soon, but he had a good idea who it might be.
I thought they'd come by tomorrow at the earliest.
He had heard that the battlefield had just been secured. Was it an impatient gift, or were they expecting something?
I'll be out soon.
Marcus draped a jacket loosely over his shirt and went out. The gift had arrived, and now it was time to deliver it. This gift was for one person. It was the result of Marcus's careful deliberation. The recipient of the gift was, of course, Enkrid.